Welcome back to the Mason Miller Show, where we're joined by Coach Hurtis and now Malcolm Miller. Welcome to the show, Malcolm.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we got Coach Hurtis' second pick here, the cream soda, so we're going to go ahead and try that out, if that's okay with you, Coach.
That's fine by me. Definitely cream soda.
Yeah, it's creamy.
A little too sweet for me.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite.
I don't
No,
know.
it's a little-
I'm a fan. I
You
like
know,
cream.
Are you a fan?
Yeah.
You like that sweet stuff?
Malcolm likes
Yeah.
vanilla.
When I taste stuff like that, like we had another one that was similar to that.
It's
and
the
strawberry one,
Lost
isn't it?
Trail.
But what it reminds me of, Coach, and I bet it'll remind you of, is back in the old days when they would make those like a float and they'd drop a thing of ice cream down in it. And I never really liked them very well, but a lot of people, like if that was cold and you put a chunk of ice cream in there, it'd make a good float.
What
What's
it
up?
reminds me of is my mom trying to slip medicine into a drink.
The version of NyQuil to try to get you to fall
Yep.
asleep.
You get in there, take this, whether you
Right.
like it or not.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, now that you coach basketball, but you also coach a lot of other sports. What other sports did you coach?
There is a rumor going around that you did coach basketball. Is that true? It says here you were a basketball coach.
I was there. Well, Mason, you want me to tell you all of them?
Yeah, let's hear
Well,
what sports did you coach?
I know which one. What I never guessed that you told
Like
me one
every
time that
men's
you coached for a
Well,
long time.
I obviously coached football and baseball. Baseball for a long time, football for 25 years too. But at one time or another, I coached tennis, golf, cross country, and that was for 7
How would a
years.
typical tennis practice go? Like, you can't make them run, can you?
Well, you see, I learned early on that you never coach individual sports. Individual sports, if they don't work on it really hard on them, their own out, you cannot teach it. And no, you can, but they will react very differently than people in team sports. And you know, believe it or not, there's crying in tennis and there's crying in golf, and those kind of things just really bothered me that that you do that sort of thing. And so I found out early on that I did not want to be in individual sports.
You know, so you were cross country coach, and I can briefly remember the tail end of that. Maybe I was in junior high when I remember you being a cross country coach, because I remember back then you'd get like a pickup truck or something, and the guys would jump in the back of it sometimes and go out to wherever they were going to run or practice. But in your heyday of cross country coach, I mean, you had Matons and Yakis, right? So there probably wasn't a whole lot of coaching. It was just go out and win.
I was the greatest cross country coach. You can't believe it. I would put the Matons, Yakis out there and the Schaefer kid, and we would never lose a dual meet. And and my coaching philosophy is very simple: go out there and run fast, stay ahead of everybody, and we'll do well.
Yeah.
Didn't you say you did that for about 13 years? Something
7
like that?
years.
Oh.
Andy
I thought it was longer than that.
Andy Chickalewski, may he rest in peace, had some sort of a deal come up, and he couldn't coach it 1 year. So he came to me and asked me if I would do it. And I didn't want to, but I said, okay, I will. Well, I was going to do it for 1 year, and it turned into a 7-year gig. But we had great people, the Matons and the Yakis and then the Schaefer. They were really good. But one of the really funny things, we had a kid move in named John Fenton. And he had been from a good cross-country place, and he was a really good runner. And he came up to me one day, and he goes, "Coach, we need to do some fartlek." And I said, "Listen, you talk to me like that again, you're going to be running forever." But actually, there was this Norwegian who came up, that was his name, and it was a method of training, and we actually did learn to use it. But I didn't really know very much about cross-country, so I just took him out early and made him run 10, 12 miles, and then we did sprint work, and things worked out working. Like I say, when you have good people, you can be a good coach.
Right. It's amazing how great a coach you are when you have a ton of talent, and how bad you are when the talent's not there, right?
That is very true. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still pig.
Do you think your second favorite, well, obviously basketball is your love, but you think baseball was probably your second?
Without a doubt, baseball was a fun sport. I didn't like practicing baseball as well because you had to give everybody a chance. You had to do all that stuff. So the practices some kinds
It's
wore
not as
out.
fast paced as basketball at all.
But the games themselves are great. I mean, I really enjoyed baseball. Football was interesting because it was just a matter of you guessing what they were going to do on offense and what you were going to do on defense. And I just could never understand how kids would want to practice it, though. We would take them out there and make them do two-a-days, and it was just terrible. The things we did to them, they should have quit. But football was interesting from that standpoint. Football is a coach's game. I mean, good players, yes, but you can do a lot of coaching in football because you have 30 seconds in between every play. That's where basketball is a player's game because it's up and down and that sort of thing. Yeah, you can do stuff, but it's more of a player's game than football. But it was interesting. I coached with some really good people.
Yeah, like Toby Kuntz, assistant coach of the baseball team.
I deny that.
He claims that he carried the weight.
I understand, but I can remember Toby back in the day. He had no clue what was going on.
He's undefeated in his varsity record.
What,
covered for you for 2
The one
games?
time when I got kicked out, you mean?
So in the height of your heyday of coaching football, was that with Coach O'Boyle when you really started?
Well, there's some interesting stories on football. Coach O'Boyle came, and he was a guy that kids loved. They loved to play for him, but he was crazy. I mean, he was insane. And
this is early 80s?
Yeah. And then Temples came, and I hated Temples because 2 days with Temples meant as coach you came in at 6:30 and left at 10:30 at night. You did the rest of the time. And with Temps, nobody was ever – they might be better coaches, but they were never going to outwork him, so that was another deal. And then Brian Applegate came. The story on Applegate is really kind of funny. I had a run-in with the administration, which was not my first. But he came in, and I had been the freshman coach for a while. And I went in, and they were going to – I don't remember what all precipitated it, but I told him – I just went in and resigned. I walked out, and I saw Brian. I shook his hand. I said, well, good luck, Coach, but I'm not coaching this year. See you later. And that was how we met.
It was your first interaction with Coach Applegate when he moved to Shelbyville.
Like, and then I came back 2 years later and coached for him.
He's like, great, what I get myself into.
Yeah.
So what about Wolvie? What you coached football with Wolvie?
Oh, yeah. The Wolfman, and I can never call him Wolvie. People call him Wolvie. No, he's not that way. He's the Wolfman to me. We played against each other in high school.
And this is Coach Rick Wolverton, but everybody our age would know him as Wolvie. I mean, we always called him Wolvie. I mean, not to his face. We were terrified when we were little, but yeah.
Well, see, he and I played against each other in high school.
So he's from Oblong.
Yeah, he was Oblong. You know what they say about Oblong boys, don't you?
No.
They want to marry a normal girl. Do you know why?
Because they
can have well-rounded children.
The boy
Anyway.
from Oblong married the girl from Normal, so he could have well-rounded children.
But Wolf and I go back to there, and he's as good a friend as I have. We coached together in basketball, and I could tell you stories. It's just we're cut from somewhat the same cloth. And
we could do a 4-hour podcast just.
Do you have a favorite story of
O'Boyle and Wolverton?
Yes, I do have a favorite story on Wolverton.
Temps.
We're playing at Hillsboro, JV game, and my rule with the JV coaches was no overtimes. You can't have overtimes.
It was a good rule.
So you don't call timeouts late in the game and that sort of stuff. And we're playing Hillsboro, and he's getting beat by 35 points. And with 10 seconds to go, he calls timeout. And I'm over there dying. I'm hot. And this manager came by and I said, well, why did he call timeout? And this is what Coach Wolverton did. He drew the gym floor, he drew the bench on one side and the bench on the other, and where our locker room was, and told our kids when the horn went off, see if they could get from here to there without getting lost.
So then you're okay with him calling a timeout after you heard that?
Yeah, so the laugh was worth it.
Everyone has Wolverton stories because I've told you this before, but he was our freshman football coach, and we had lost a game. It was the last game of the season, and we were playing Chatham Glenwood, and we were up by like a couple touchdowns or something at halftime, but he had to come up with something to get on us about at halftime. And we go into the locker room, and our center at the time, who shall go nameless, let's just say he had an emergency and needed to get to the bathroom, and he's trying to get all of his pads and, girdle, all that stuff off to, there's a lot to get off to get down to it. And the men's locker room is just the same as it is today. I mean, there's just urinals the stall's right there.
Hasn't changed.
Right, and there's a chalkboard. And so our coaches are all in there, and Coach Wolverton comes walking in, and he just starts, you guys got to be kidding me. You're playing soft and weak and blah, blah, blah. And right about then, this kid just cuts loose in that toilet in there. I mean, you can just hear it. And everybody's just sitting there trying to keep a straight face. And Wolvie's just going on. And finally he stops and goes, smells like a damn sewer in here. And we all died laughing. And even Wolvie starts laughing. But we still to this day remember that.
Well, let me tell you this about Wolverton, though. If you ever need anything, all you got to do is ask.
Oh, he's another one of those guys. I mean, those, you and Wolvie and, I was too young for O'Boyle, but I've heard my brother talk about him. I mean, just beloved. And then Temps was the same way. And, I mean, guys that would just, you talk about your college coach that could just make a 90-pound kid run through a brick wall. I mean, that's the way it is, and it's forever that way. I mean, you guys are always remembered that way.
Yeah, well, when I came back, though, I had these bunch of softies, when I first came back to basketball coaching.
A lot of work to do.
We had these people that I don't think I could have got them to run through a foam wall. Let alone a brick wall. How about that, Malcolm?
I don't know.
What kind of response do you have to that?
Probably, I don't know. I think you're thinking about pulling trot, maybe. Pulling's not running through a wall.
Hollywood.
Me and Watson, maybe.
Well, Miami. Remember Miami?
Yeah, I remember Bevice.
I had trouble with names, so I just made him
I mean, didn't he make you guard the wall one time?
The baseline.
Guard the baseline?
A couple of times, actually.
It got around him twice.
Yeah, making me call out help whenever the ball's on the other side of the floor, and I'm guarding the baseline.
Well, don't feel bad about that because it was your either sophomore or junior year, and we were down in Vandalia tournament, and Rich Byers was down there, and Mike Steers. I think it was your junior year, and your son Kevin, and they all were down there. Rich was coaching, but he stayed, and we were all sitting there watching the game, and somehow it came up that about Malcolm having to guard the baseline in practice or whatever, because we were going to play defense like that, see if you can just guard this baseline. And they all started laughing when I brought it up or something because they're all like, oh, Byers used to have to guard the baseline. And Rich was like, oh, yeah, man, I've been down that road.
It was hilarious. Rich was guarding the baseline, and I had him there in a defensive stance, just sliding back and forth. And it had been about 20 minutes. So he started coughing and hacking and stuff like that. I just kept ignoring him and kept him there. But he played defense after that, so it works.
Rich also told a story. He said something about, of course, you had him in junior high, and, probably he was a young kid, probably 6'4" back then, and he said he got a bad habit of just turning around and he would just jump up and drop the ball in the hoop instead of using the backboard. And Coach wasn't having it. And finally, Coach said every time you don't use the backboard on a layup, you got to run, you got to take off and run. And Rich is telling me this at that game, and he's like, I did it. Yeah, I did that so many times that literally I got to where if I turned around and just dropped it in the hoop, I wouldn't even wait for Coach. I would just take off on a sprint around the gym. I wouldn't even wait for him to tell me. And he goes, to this day, if I'm messing around under there and I just drop it in, that is burned into my mind. It almost makes me feel like I should take off running.
Now, be honest, Malcolm. You can't still hear my voice, can you?
Oh, every time I play basketball, I'll make a turnover and all I hear in my mind is, what in the hell are you thinking? My senior year, you wouldn't yell it out at me my senior year, but my sophomore and junior year, you would have been calling timeout just to yell at me.
All right,
everyone else stand on the floor.
Whenever you would mess up, he'd just blame it on me. Whenever you
he only did it one time my senior year.
Threw a ball 8 feet over my head, and he's yelling at me I can't catch that.
It's because you're a freshman, bud.
Well, yeah.
You didn't see the full. You saw it from the stands. The sophomore and junior years when he caught before he finally clicked in. But I can remember. I remember his very first game back to Meet the Rams.
It was Meet the Rams.
The whole town was there just to watch Coach Hurtis, and it was
most people have ever
exhibition.
seen. There was more people than were at any of my freshman games.
Exhibition
Meet
game.
the Rams,
and he calls timeout right off.
He tells everyone to stay out there just to yell at me for doing something wrong.
That was stupid. Awesome.
I deny it.
Yeah, there's no tape on that one, but everyone knows.
We remember it though.
Everyone knows it. He did it at Mattoon too. I called a timeout in Mattoon in a summer game just to yell at me, and the whole gym just went silent, and all you could hear was you yelling at me for something.
We were playing.
I was speaking in a firm voice.
But there was only one ref that ever stood up to Coach Hurtis, and that was at that summer game It was that lady.
Oh, you remember that?
Oh, that girl.
Whenever we were at Worcester,
That girl, yeah.
she was threatening to tee you up or throw you out, and you just turned back out of the bench like.
And you just sit down.
Jill called me. I couldn't go to that. She goes, "This is the first time I've ever seen Coach speechless." He just stopped and started to turn. I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll sit down."
Well,
know what to say.
there is no rationalizing with women.
Oh Lord, here we go. We're gonna people be protesting now.
Oh gosh, I can't remember what you tell the
Edit
kids in
that.
the back of the bus about.
No, we're not going down that
yeah,
road.
Yeah, we can't say that.
you're right. We'll keep that on the bus.
You got to keep those bus conversations.
It's one of those
in the
things where
bus.
you think before you speak.
Well, oh no, I never do that.
No, I'm saying Mason.
Oh yeah.
Before you bring that stuff up.
It was. I was always amazed at today's kids, though. I don't understand how they were brought up because they don't know a lot of things that
Like
I had to tell them, you know, about life.
Oh gosh.
Like what?
Like a lot of things.
You should have kept coaching because I think you could keep pouring more
There's
knowledge
a lot
out
more
there for
wisdom.
for all the kids.
I had
in-
so many
in the country.
sayings. I had so many sayings. They had no idea what I was talking about.
Well, jingle jangles. No one knew what you meant.
Jingle jangles. Everybody knows what jingle jangles.
No one under the age of 60 says every cotton pick in time. Except you've thrown that out there a lot.
How about Dadgummit?
He'd say,
No, I've heard that.
throw his
a couple
hat and
times.
say, "God bless America."
Well, you yelled at him. I remember Vandalia was like a 8 o'clock in the morning
Oh,
game, so
yeah,
no
that's a
one's
good
there.
one.
And you yelled at him. You're a day late and
We're
a
up by
dollar
30.
short. And we were up by 30.
You're a day late and a dollar short.
You're a day late and a dollar short. Everyone's dying laughing in the crowd.
You were.
Well,
The great
You're
part
right.
about those early morning Vandalia tournament games is everybody on the radio could hear it plain as day because there wasn't enough people there, and coach's voice would just echo
just
right
echo.
over.
it didn't matter if
everything.
the gym was full; you'd be able to hear what he said
Oh, it
from
cut
the
right
bench.
through everybody.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
You know, the thing is though, everybody, unless you really know him, like Coach wasn't a cusser though.
No,
I mean,
not at
people
all.
would
He
think-
never cussed in the locker room.
Not at all.
which is so when Malcolm was getting ready to go to college, his coach was like, you know, this will be the hardest thing you've ever done, and you know, and it was, I'm sure it was a lot, but it was kind of funny because the intensity of it all. I remember asking Malcolm, like, you know, is it pretty? He's like, yeah, it's pretty intense, but it's just like Coach Erdis. It's not really that much different as far as the intensity.
Cussing and more of them.
Right.
There's 4 of them instead of just 1.
Right. But that's good. I mean, I remember sitting in a game, I think it was Sullivan. And I think you were maybe a junior, and we were not playing well at all. And I don't know if it was a tournament or what it was, but you just weren't playing well. And Coach was getting on you and pulled you out and yanked you.
Oh, that was my senior year.
No, it was sophomore.
No, 'cause
I know this. I know you were a junior because he was just letting it eat, and we were about 10 rows up, and he said he's pacing back and forth, and he turned back around and started again, and he goes, "You're never playing college basketball. You're too soft to play college basketball." And I remember somebody's like, "How do you let him talk to your son like that?" And I was like, "Because I agree with every word he's saying." Right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure, like, in practice one time, he said, D1, more like D9, just trying to see if he could make me mad. But I'm just like, or then another time, my sophomore year, I feel like I barely even knew him. And we were running, but it wasn't even my fault. And we're running, and he's like, I don't know where. He's like, Malcolm, I've seen better leaders at the nursing home. And I'm like, what are you coming at me for? Are you just trying to make me mad?
Yeah, he's trying to toughen you
trying to
up.
fire you
Watson
up.
was looking at me like, what is this dude talking about?
Well, you know, I mean, you were loafing.
Yeah, okay.
But you always, Cade right off the bat was rattled because he got a new name. Cade's too hard to remember. You're Ralph now.
I don't think Watson was ever rattled. He just always tried to test him, but it never worked.
I never saw Watson rattled in my life.
No, I don't think he was rattled, but he was like caught off guard because it's the first time he met him. He's like, "You're Ralph now."
Only time Watson was rattled is whenever he's shooting free throws.
Oh, are you
man,
kidding me?
he's good.
Hey, who hit the biggest free throw in those last 3 years?
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh, yeah, it's
without a
Watson.
doubt. And I had full confidence in him. It didn't even cross my mind that he might miss the second one.
Not me.
I knew he'd give us one. I knew he wouldn't make 2, but I knew he'd give us one.
Threw the other one off the backboard.
I'm saying
Well-
it doesn't matter. He made one.
Yeah.
He did what he had to do.
I know.
I learned a lesson about free throws though. My first year that I coached, I'm at Windsor, and our best player got fouled with no time on the clock. We're down 1. He's got a 1-and-1, and he's our best player, right? And he gets up there, and I didn't even talk to him during the timeout, that sort of stuff. You know, I mean, he's going to make it or he's not. You know, so you don't talk to him. talking a little bit to the other kids. He goes up there and he takes his 2 dribbles. He takes his breath, and then rigor mortis set in. He shot a free throw that never got more than 8 feet high and landed in the middle of the lane. Oh. What do you say to a kid after that?
that is bad.
You're dead on, just a little more.
Yeah.
I said you're a choke artist. No, you can't say that. But you know,
we've been there.
It's interesting. It's interesting from both sides when you talk to players and then you talk to coaches and what they see and what they hear. It is really, really, really interesting. Now, I'm going to give Malcolm credit here, which I don't really like to do, but I will.
Never have.
He grew into understanding what I wanted, and that was the great thing about the senior year. We were at least on the same page. And the only times I ever yelled at him my senior year was just so that the other kids knew I would yell at him too, just so that we would, that sort of thing.
Yeah, wasn't very often though, actually.
Mason, on the other hand,
he got it all out the first 2 years.
Yeah, Mason, on the other hand, was free game. He was interesting. That was fun.
I never had to guard the baseline, though.
No, you
should
did
have
not.
A couple times.
Well, I was a defensive all-star, so you don't put your.
Besides, that one pass to you was right there. You just missed it.
Yeah,
it was not.
That quarterback throw is
I
right
had
there.
to get a ladder to catch that ball.
You should have anticipated that's what was coming.
Yeah, you should have been running faster. Maybe you would have got it.
You stopped and waited. You should have kept running. If you kept running, you'd have had a layup.
Eat the pass.
What'd you tell? So it was St. Teresa or your junior year, Watson and Pullen and Spearsy's senior year, and Watson gets fouled, and I'm sitting next to Wes and Jamie up there. Joe and I are in, and the whole crowd jumps up, we're all like, yeah, like that. And I look, and Wes and Jamie don't even move. They're just stone-faced, just staring, like nothing even happened. I go, he's got this. And they wouldn't even acknowledge anything because they both, Jamie's like, I think I'm going to be sick. And what did you go up and tell Watson? So they called timeout, right, to try to ice him?
Yeah, they called timeout because the dude was yelling at him and stuff. And before that, I told Conlon, I was like, he's going to give us one. He's due. I know he's going to give us one. I don't know if he'll give us 2. And then I went up to Watson, and I was like, it's just like we're shooting in practice.
And you had fouled out. You were out.
I fouled out like 30 seconds before that or something. And I told Watson, I was like, it's just me and you shooting free throws. The way we shot free throws together in practice. And he actually was decent in practice at shooting free throws.
But what did he say to you?
He just looked at me like...
He said, I don't make him in practice, didn't he?
Yeah, he said something. He's like, I don't really make him in practice either. And I was like...
I don't know.
Well, you're due.
I just never worry. I mean, I remember looking straight at Wes, and I'm like, we've got this. He's got this. I guarantee it.
I don't know. I feel like I had to say something because whenever he was out there, he just heard all of St. T booing and all of us cheering. I just remember him looking down at the floor, about to get the ball, and I'm like, oh gosh.
Watson was a gamer. He didn't. I wasn't worried.
No.
Yeah, but he was less than 30% on a 2-footer.
Yeah, but he was our Dennis Rodman that year.
He was.
He could play defense.
That kid would D up. He played the hardest guy, and he would get after it and rebound.
He was a lot of fun. He was a lot of fun.
Well,
and he actually, like Malcolm said, he wanted to test me a few times.
Oh, yeah, it was all the time. He'd always say, like, at the end of the year, we'd all go to Joe's all the time. And whenever Coach Curtis was there, he's like, I bet I can beat you in a staring contest.
Watson would say that?
Yeah.
As a
and him not even breaking a smile, he's like, when do you want to start? Watson's like, right now. And Coach Curtis literally doesn't even blink or anything, and Watson cannot keep it together. He just keeps laughing every time. Then he's like, you know what? Maybe we should box. I think I can take you in boxing.
Man, I remember him saying that.
And Coach Curtis is like, you don't want to do that, son.
He would get knocked out.
Tell him about what was the bus ride when you guys were going to
we were going
Pana.
to Pana. We were going to Pana. It was my junior year. It was my junior year. So we were going to Pana.
We're going to edit this out.
We're turning right.
So you're getting ready to turn right.
Yeah, and Watson and I always sat in the back with them. And
the coaches sat in the back, right?
Yeah, and Watson and I always sat in the seats right in front of them. And he gets up and starts yelling at Coach Curtis starts getting up and yelling at the bus driver. Whoa, 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 we're going to Windsor. And then everyone's like, what? And then Watson turns around and was like, we're going to Pana, man. So then we play Windsor like 2 days later. We're going to turn to Windsor. And then Watson just stands up and yells at the top of his lungs, whoa, 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 we're going to Pana. And Coach Curtis just sit in the back. He can't even say anything because he knows he messed up.
But, I mean, that is
it's typical.
Serious guts right there.
Oh, Watson was just back there trying to press buttons all the time.
Oh gosh.
You know, he was always.
But coach like respects that. He's like, man, that kid's he's got a set of you know what if he'll do.
He was trying to take cheap shots from me. He was like trying to sink a battleship with a pea shooter.
And then Watson would do about anything you told him to, but afterwards he'd always complain. Every time that we'd run, I'd always stand by him, and he'd be like, you know what? One of these times, whenever he tells me to go on the baseline, I'm just going to say, why don't you get on the baseline? Just to see what he says. And I was like, I will give you any amount of money just to see you do that.
Death.
Whenever you were like just joking around, but whenever you were really mad at us, whenever you say get the baseline, him just say, why don't you get on the baseline?
That would have been a mistake.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's what I told him. I was just like, you won't do it.
That would have been a mistake.
So that group though was interesting because you had, they were obviously a great football team. And they were football players first. Kind of what you go back to earlier is getting the most out of kids that maybe that's not their number one sport. Maybe it's not even their number two sport, but still working with them to make them part. That group, those like Turner Pullen obviously was not going to be in the gym working every day on his jump shot through the off season because it wasn't even his probably his third sport. I mean, track and obviously football were his, but bringing him in and you guys, I think that first year back was intense for everybody.
It was rough.
But then
year,
once you got, but I think you guys got really close after that and kind of figured each other out.
Well, the thing with Turner was we needed one guy on the other team to hit him in the head early.
Get him fired up.
Yeah, get him mad.
That'd make him mad and then he'd play hard. Otherwise, he sometimes had to. He did what I called the pull and trot.
Yeah, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because he was a bull, and when he played a lot bigger than he was. That's for sure.
Yeah, because we weren't very big.
Then you had Spearsy, who was the dynamo. He was
the red curtain.
Which
Coach Curtis
goes, this Spears kid might be a genius. Like halfway through the year, and I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I gotta tell you, every time I get ready to really light him up for something, he trots over to me and goes, Coach, I'm sorry, I was wrong on that. And he goes, it totally deflates me. I'm not sure what to do after that. Got to figure it out. He goes, all the rest of them, Malcolm and Watson, Turner, man, I can just eat on them and they'll just take it. And he goes, but Spears got me figured out.
Oh, yeah, Spears is like one of the nicest people ever. But every once in a while, like if someone take a cheap shot at Turner or I, Spears be right there in the middle jawing at him. I'm like, where's this coming from?
That's those football players, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, the thing with Spears, though, he'd light up the three-point shot. He might hit 3 in a row, and then he might shoot 4 air balls.
Yeah, he'd have games where he'd go off for like 18 out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Old Spearsy, I loved his energy. It's kind of like Stick. Stick the next year would be, you never know. All of a sudden he'd bust out with a crazy 2 or 3 threes in a game. You're like, where'd that come from?
Best thing we ever did with Stick, though, he was really surely he won't listen to this. He really wasn't a very good defensive player, but then we played the team that had the big guy, and I just told him to face guard him all the time. We had him face guard the centers from on in, and he became a good defensive player. When he face guarded, didn't have any help responsibility. As long as all he had to do was face guard one guy, he did a good job.
Oh, yeah.
That was an interesting thing with him.
What was crazy to me is the year before, he'd always be the one to come in and take me out whenever you were mad at me, and he'd run point. And then the next year, he's our 4 or 5 all the time.
He did great.
We didn't have any choice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
he was I enjoyed watching Stick. Again, it was kind of taking guys that it was their second or third sports and plugging them in and making a good team out of it. But so I want to talk here before we break about obviously, and you talked about it a million times, but state champs and coaching with Sean Taylor a little bit.
Well, Sean Taylor, of all the coaches I ever worked with, was the best. Now, Temps and boy, if they hear this, they're both going to not talk to me for a while. But and they were excellent coaches. But Sean Taylor, I don't know how to actually verbalize all this, but he was the guy that made the difference. We had a really, really good team. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did. We had a really good team. We had talent. We had 7 kids. We had 3 inside players, all 6'5" or bigger that were good players. We had 4 really good guards, and we had to make a good team. We had a great JV team to practice against. But Sean had the ability, And he showed me that you need to be able to joke with kids a little bit. You need to be able to talk to them earlier. Now, he would get on them.
Oh, yeah.
And he said things that I would never say. But he was the guy that he finished that team off. Now, there's a lot of people that would have said, okay, a lot of people could have won a state championship with that team. Well, that might be true, but let me tell you what. He was the guy. He was great. He was wonderful. And Sean and I are tremendous friends. We had a really good run, and I was devastated when he left because things were going good. I understood why he left. I mean, I would have too in his situation, but it was just such a good thing. He knew basketball. He knew X's and O's, that sort of thing, but he knew how to coach people.
Yeah.
And he had that ability, and he was a lot like, I would say, Don Eddy was back in the day. He could get you to do things that you didn't think you could do, and it was wonderful. We had great kids, and of course, I'm very proud of the fact that 2 of my kids were part of that team. You know, Kevin, if Malcolm thinks things were tough, he should have been there when I was coaching Kevin, my own son. But it was Sean Taylor was just wonderful, and I smile every time I talk to him. I just talked to him the other day, and he just did a great job.
And he's still to this day overachieving as a coach.
Without a doubt, he won games last year with a team that playing in the largest division. The 6'3" was the biggest kid they had, and they had a couple 5'8" guys, and they still won games. Sean Taylor was he's just a wonderful basketball coach.
Well, you know, obviously I didn't play for him or anything, but knew him fairly, well, hung out a little bit with him. And the thing about Sean is you can meet him in 2 minutes. You don't feel like he's a stranger at all. He's got a magnetism about him, and you can see why kids
let me tell you this
gravitate
much.
towards him.
I would like to know who takes care of his uniforms and balls and stuff, because he is pathetic at that. He doesn't have any idea. When he was here, he never did anything but coach, because we did the rest of it. I mean, he just doesn't know. He can't drive a car. Every car he has dings in it, that sort of thing. He doesn't pay any attention. But as far as basketball, he was right
Tell
there.
him about the first time that when he first moved to town and wanted to watch film with you.
Yeah. Sean calls me up and he says, hey, why don't you come over and we'll watch game film tonight? I said, okay. He said, well, when you come over, why don't you bring some pizza? I said, okay. How about some beer? I said, okay. So I go to his house, or he had an apartment here.
Right.
He didn't have any sheets on the bed. There were none. It was just the mattress. And his floor was literally covered with his clothes. And I said, Coach, am I going to walk on your clothes? He said, yeah, I do. So, but Sean was just that kind of guy. But he's matured a little since then. His wife has finally put a little discipline in him.
Made him a little civilized.
Yes.
What year did he get here?
What year did Sean come?
Yeah.
He came in 94, 95, and then 95, 96, 96, 97. He was here 3 years. And, there were some people that really kind of took shots at him for saying, well, yeah, he came with the best team and then ran. But he wanted to keep going up.
Right.
And he had an opportunity to go up, so he did. He wasn't planning on staying here that long. When I came here, I didn't plan on staying that long. But Sean was the guy that put us over the top. He was just that much.
Well, and I think the combination of you two together, I think was perfect. And it's interesting because I never would have envisioned you as an assistant coach. If going into that, I would have thought, ooh, I don't know about that.
Being an assistant coach was a revelation. I had never done it. I had never been an assistant coach in basketball. But when you move down one seat, it's amazing. And I know these two guys, Mason and Malcolm, are going to look at me and go, I know this is not true, but it is true. I became the good cop. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the head coach has to be the bad cop, but I became the good cop. I was the guy when they came over. I was building up egos and doing that kind of stuff, and that sort of thing. Now, when I coached the JV team, that maybe didn't work that way, but it was a good run. We had great teams. The following was great. But I was a pretty damn good assistant coach. Let me tell you, I could get stuff done.
I remember one.
I don't have an ego problem. I have a real large one.
I remember that scrimmage one time. We were home from college. I was maybe a sophomore or junior. And, I mean, it was everybody who'd played basketball for the last 10 years. I mean, there's Mayton and Nichols, and all those guys were there. Everybody from my class that played, we all went out and scrimmaged, and those guys were sophomores. So, and we went out and, I mean, dropped the of course, there's like 14 of us, and we just kept rotating guys in and dropped the hammer on them and on that team. And all I can remember is you had Taylor and Hurtis both walking up down the side, just both. I mean, everybody thought Sean was such a nice guy. I mean, just chewing the whole time. And, I mean, it was so loud in there. Those guys just barking. We'd stop and end a game. We'd all go get a drink, and those guys would get that team on the baseline, and Sean would walk up and down, just eat on them, and they'd just run. And then they would play again. And we probably played 5 games. After that, Sean was so upset. Didn't he take them in the locker room and make them get dressed, and they all went back out and practiced?
Yep.
And that was the last time we ever beat those guys. That was it. Because then that summer when we started playing them, it was amazing going from when they were going into their sophomore year to going into their junior year when you play open gyms. That was it. I mean, they were at a whole other level then.
Well, you know, and I believe in this 100%. You've got to lift during the basketball season. You have to do it. You have
water and weights.
You have to, you know, and what we did was a very quick thing, but it works. And we did the same thing with that group of kids. The first year we didn't lift, and after that we lifted, and they got stronger. You got to be strong to play basketball. If you're not strong, you can't play basketball. You're going to get pushed around. You're going to get beat up, that sort of thing. But Taylor, he knew those things, yet he didn't want to do the weights, so I did the weights.
And so you were in charge of the weights, the balls, and the uniforms.
Yes, he wouldn't go up there. None of that stuff bothered him. He did all the rest stuff. But now, Sean, great guy. You know, I tell you an interesting story, though. I told you about the extended practice I had earlier when I was first starting.
Right.
We're practicing one night, and instead of kicking him out like I kicked you out, right? You remember that, right?
Didn't forget it.
He calls practice off. We're not practicing very well. He calls them off and tells them go over and sit down. And the good thing about this story is he goes, the only person I feel sorry for here is Coach Hurtis because his family's at home. I said, no, Coach, they're not. I said, there's the 2 boys, and Marie's sitting up there in the stands. And my wife had come to practice. She was sitting up there watching. So we didn't have a problem.
Right. It's like, no, we're good. Take your time.
And I will admit that freely that I had the best coach's wife anybody ever had. And she had to put up with so much because people would sit around and they used to say, I guess, nasty things about me up in the stands, and she'd have to listen
I
to
couldn't imagine that ever.
Oh. You can't imagine that?
No.
What do you think, Mace?
Don't ask me that.
So one other thing I wanted to touch on here that was your time broadcasting with Jim Finks, where when you were on your sabbatical from coaching in the what would that have been? Late 80s? I guess it would have been late 80s and early 90s.
It was early 90s because I have a tape.
Well, it was also late 80s.
Right.
We did several years in there.
Kind of that 87 to 93 range, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So tell them a little bit about how'd you get into that and what'd you think of it?
Well, I loved it. It was great. I never made one coaching error the whole time I was setting up there. No, it was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot doing that. That's one of the things that I think I took with me when I got back in coaching is I learned a lot setting up there. But I don't know, Jim came to me one day and said something about, would you like to do a game? And so we got to do it, and we made a pretty good duo. We went through things, and one of the funny side stories to this, and I'll leave the guy nameless, but back when I was coaching as a head coach here, he was on a group that they got a petition up. They kind of wanted to get rid of me, you know. And then years later, he comes up to me and he sits down. We're up at morning breakfast, and he said, boy, it's really nice to have somebody on the radio that knows basketball. And I looked him right in the eye and I said, really? 15 years ago, you were trying to get me fired. And he didn't respond. So we sat there and had coffee and talked and that sort of thing. But doing the radio was fantastic. It was fun. It was great. It was a wonderful thing. You got to sit there and you got to watch things, and you got to plan, what you thought you would do, and then you do those kind of things. And I really think that's another thing, like I was telling you about the Army, I could have stayed in. I think had I known, earlier, it might have been something you might have tried to look at as a career.
Well, and Jim Finks was phenomenal. I mean, he was great at you two together were very good, but sounded.
Well, he had a perfect radio voice.
Oh, yeah. And just had a great flow, and, did a really nice job. Back then, so it was WSHY, was the radio. And on TV, there was a TV channel. Like, this would blow kids' minds, but back then, streaming back then was a TV channel you could flip to, and all it had was the radio playing on it, but it had a little stream across the bottom of digital, like school's canceled today or whatever. And so whatever was on the radio was playing on there. So when we would have a basketball game, my mom would put a VCR tape in
That's what I watched.
to set it and record, so you could hear Coach. You didn't see any video, but you could hear Jim Finks and Coach Hurtis do it, and then we'd go back and record that, and then all the players would listen to it to listen to what Coach Hurtis had to say.
People didn't realize what was going on. We didn't even know if we were on the air half the time. The equipment we used was really old and really bad. But one night, Jim, we're playing Windsor, and I had coached at Windsor, right? So we're playing Windsor and beating them by 35, 40 points, I don't know. So at the end of the game, Jim thought he would ask this real intelligent question of me, which he should have known better. He said, well, what do you think the turning point in this game was? And I looked at him, I said, a bad call. He said, a bad call? We won by 40 points. He said, what are you talking about, a bad call? I said, well, when Windsor called for the bus to bring him over here.
And that went out over the air?
Yeah. He was wanting to shut it off. He said, we got Windsor sponsors. I said, I don't care. I'm not getting paid by those people.
I don't care. Oh, yeah, I bet he was on pins and needles.
And then I'll tell you one other one, and you may have to edit this one out. But we were playing at Nokomis, and I don't know that any of you know, but Nokomis had a woman that lived over there that was a playmate. And she had some very outstanding points. And she had made it up and down the steps several times, and Jim was kind of nudging me. And, again, he asked this question. He should have known better. He asked me, he said, well, what do you think? I said, I don't know. I think Ref's missing. Looked like double dribble to me, and he shut off. So we had a really fun time doing it. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was educational.
Well, and you got to see a pretty good team. You got to go to Shelbyville made it to Elite Eight that year in Assembly Hall.
I will never forget at Mater Dei, though. Matt Maton was a great point guard. And we had that game won, and Mason and Malcolm can both relate to this. He picked his dribble up before he got to the half-court line. Point guard. How's that, Malcolm? Can you do that?
No.
And he turned it over, and we lost the game, I think, by 1 point or something. And I will. It's one of those things that just it burns in my mind because he never did that, but he picked his dribble up, and that cost us.
Because he was. One of the best offensive point guards.
Very good. Very good.
That I ever was around. Yeah, so unlike him, and no one had ever beaten them down there at Breeze, or we had never beaten them ever at Breeze at that point until Kevin's group, right?
Right. That's the first time we ever beat them. But now I will relate this story to you because there's a young lady here who will like this story. We went down there in volleyball, and this team that played in volleyball just beat the tire out of Breeze at Breeze, and that was the first victory we'd ever had at Breeze in any.
Wasn't
sport.
Breeze a terrible place to play? Like the locker room was really hot or something was really cold?
Well,
it was either the gym or the locker room.
That was that, and then they treated you very badly. They didn't give you any seats, and they were rude, and they were good. So, yes, it was a bad place to play.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was definitely a challenge for everybody. It's the only time I ever saw Pana and Shelbyville both stand up. We were playing Pana at Pana on a Friday night. I can't remember if it was my junior or senior year, but they had announced that they would announce mid-state scores during a timeout, and we were sitting there on the bench, and I can remember both somebody announced that the Greenville was beating Breeze or something like that, and both sides stood up and applauded. That was a standing ovation from both sides. That's how about everybody hated Breeze. That was one thing Payne and Show could always agree on. But
well, Coach, it's been great having you on the show tonight. I'm sure you had a great time.
Actually, I was very, very, very nervous and intimidated.
It was nice.
Like
I thought Mason did a nice job of coaxing you out of your cell.
Yeah.
Usually have that effect on people.
Yes, you do.
Make them feel comfortable
There
around
you
me.
go. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
That is a good
you got a
question.
good parting question here for Coach?
I know the answer.
So what is the best athlete in the family?
In the Hurtis family.
Heather. I have told that to my sons before, but they have no argument. She was.
Does that include grandkids? She's still the best one so far?
So far. She was, but she's also my favorite. So Kevin and Dirk know that. But no, she was a very, very, very good athlete. Kevin was the most driven. Mm-hmm. He and I had the most difficulty together because he was most like me. Dirk was very, very smart, and he knew not to mess with me, so we didn't have any problem with that. But I've got wonderful kids. All three of them are wonderful kids. They've got wonderful families. They've had some really good athletes themselves. Zach is at Southern, and Blake's going to be a really good athlete, and the girls are starting to come around and some stuff. But
so Zach's Heather's boy, and
Zach's Heather's boy.
He plays football at Southern.
Yes,
quarterback, and he's be a junior next year, right? And then
no, with this new rule, he's still a redshirt freshman.
Well, yeah, it's Malcolm too. He can play.
But
Malcolm will be 34.
It is his third year. Yeah,
burns up the rest of his. And then Blake is Kevin's son over in Indiana.
Yep,
and he's good at everything, right? Football, basketball, baseball.
He's just like his dad. He plays all three sports. And then Brooke she's playing travel volleyball now, and we're starting to try to compare her to Heather. And then, of course, the little girl is only 6, and then Dirk has 2 kids in dance, and they do very good in dance. But
now, do you teach them? Do you coach them in that?
Well, I don't know if this makes me a bad grandpa or what, but I went to a couple of the dance things, and it took 4 hours, and they danced for 3 minutes. So since then, I've always been able to plan my trips when they're not dancing.
Oh. You just watch the video?
I watch the videos.
You do, and you're proud of them, and you show the videos,
I do
so
that.
that's good. And what about the gymnast?
Well, she's talking about Ishka Bibble. Most people don't know who Ishka Bibble is. She's my granddaughter. Her name is Lauren, but I call her Ishka Bibble. And she and I have been playing tag since she was 2 years old, and I'm still it. But she's a very good gymnast. She's gone to state and done well, but she's more involved than being an athlete. She's in a lot of other things, but she's a very good gymnast. But I never think of her necessarily as an athlete because of the other things that she's involved with and that sort of thing. But she's very good.
Mm-hmm. She's like her mom, big avid reader, just like you were. Does she like to read books with dragons and stuff in it too, like you do?
She does like fantasy, but she's also into some of the other stuff and all that sort of thing. She's into cooking and those kinds of things, but she's more intelligent than I am.
Well,
I can't believe you just admitted that about another person.
That's her
mom.
Well,
actually, that's a lie. I don't think there's anybody more intelligent than me, but you know how that goes.
You're right.
There it is.
That goes from Marie to Heather to now to Lauren. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been blessed. Let's face it, I've been blessed. I got a great family. I had a wonderful wife. I had great kids to coach. I wouldn't change anything.
You got one more comeback in you, Coach?
No.
That's the official end?
No. I knew I was done that last time. Like I said, I'm going to jump on that golf cart and ride away.
Right off to the sunset.
See you all later.
All right.
Well, again, Coach, I really appreciate you coming on the show and everyone for tuning in. And don't forget, you can pick up these sodas and more at Jake's Antiques, as well as Mason Miller Show merchandise. And also, thank you, Malcolm, for coming, I guess. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.